Hello World Wide Web, I'm Dr. Shadow, the only personality with the best hair. And we're back out in the great outdoors because I need to film a video really fast. But besides that, I have something on my chest that I'd like to get off. Now, there's this thing that has been more noticeable as of late, what with the Halo TV series and the Silver Timeline, of course. We all remember that. We all know what that is. That's the fact that they are ignoring pretty much all of the lore and just writing their own. As you do, as kind of standard procedure when it comes to adapting a video game to a TV format or a film, is you don't actually adapt the video game, you just kind of make something and it looks like the video game. And that's weirdly kind of been standard procedure, and there's a thing I've noticed here about it that I really want to talk about, because it's not just the creators. If you go online, if you go and check Twitter, God forbid, or anywhere else likely, and you try and find some kind of discussion about the Halo TV series, you will find people who are for it and against it. And there is a clear dividing line between the two. There's no one who really meets in the middle. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some out there. There are billions of people on this planet. People of all walks of life do exist, and I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm saying that when you are encountering the vast majority of discourse, there are two main camps to this argument. And the argument is the people who know Halo and love Halo and respect the Halo lore and are really, really against the idea of just not taking it into account when producing something new. And then there's the people who are looking at the show just as what it is, and whether they like it or not, they really don't care about whether or not it follows the game lore at all. And there is a distinct thing about these two camps. Now, like I said, there are people in the middle. They do exist. I know some of them. I see them on my timeline themselves. I'm looking at you. I know you play the games, you love the games, and you're happy with the Halo show. That's great. You are a minority, and that's fine. That's fine, but I'm not talking to you. That's a completely different position that I need to dig into more to understand. But the big thing that I'm noticing with the camps that don't care about the lore in the games, it's not so much that they don't want there to be any kind of basis, is they honestly don't seem to understand that there could be a basis for lore for the movies taken from the games, for the TV shows taken from the games, that could actually even make sense. You see arguments and thought experiments put forth from this camp, and they're saying, well, what are they supposed to do now? What, is episode 1 of the show going to be like level 1-1? What is the story even going to be? Like, people who clearly have no frickin' idea what they're talking about, because, hey, if you played the first level of Halo, you know there are a lot of cinematic elements and a ton of storytelling going on that could easily fill out at least one episode. You could probably have just the first third of the first tutorial level of Halo serve as the pilot for a Halo TV show. Just there's a lot of damn storytelling going on. And that's really not what you have. You have the Silver Timeline. The Silver Timeline. We don't have to worry about the lore. We're not affecting the lore. That is its own thing. Its own version of Halo that does not take that into account. It just kind of looks like it. It's the Silver Timeline. Silver Timeline. But yeah, the people who are into Halo, there is a couple of reasons for that. Number one is because the shooting is fun. It's a fun game. I like to shoot aliens. They go boom boom. The grunts are like, we're all gonna die! And they do, and that is fun. But the second reason that people really, really dig Halo is the story. The story has been canon and woven throughout the novels and the games just completely up until this new silver timeline popped up and decided, fuck it, I don't gotta do shit. And that's really a hard pill to swallow. Now, in contrast, the Sonic movies that have been coming out, they have been doing pretty well, and they have been very well accepted, and the storyline in the Sonic movies isn't from any of the games. I mean, it's kind of based on it here and there, but in terms of what game does this represent, it's like, yeah, a little bit of all of them, a little bit of none of them. And that still kind of makes sense in Sonic, because if you've been playing Sonic for a while, you know the timeline makes no damn sense, and things have been reset and reworked so many times already. Sonic already exists in a multiverse. Sonic Generations has new Sonic teaming up with classic Sonic. There is a lot of wiggle room there, and it really, like, when you have Sonic running off and saving a human princess to fall in love with in Sonic 06, it's kind of hard to put forth Dr. Eggman as Jim Carrey and it not still kind of work. So, yeah, there's a lot of leeway with that. But Halo is a different beast. Like I said, everything really was canon until the Paramount Plus Halo TV series and the Silver Timeline. And it reminds me a lot of other kind of game-to-TV or game-to-movie adaptations where a whole bunch of them do not take the games into account. Like, they do for a jumping-off point, like, okay, we're gonna base a little bit around here, a little bit around there. We'll do some winks and nods, some little references for some Easter eggs. That's what they get, but the rest of it, we're just gonna come up with our own thing, and there seems to be an idea in Hollywood, in filmmaking, in TV, that whatever they come up with is just inherently going to be superior to what's presented in a video game anyway, so who cares? And that same sentiment is what I see from a lot of the people who do seem to be okay with the Halo TV series. And it's just this idea that who cares what it is, like, oh, it's not like your little video game. I don't know what your little video game is, but it can't possibly be any good anyway. And it's like, what? It's just this sense of superiority that they kind of put out there against the idea of video game storylines and video game storytelling being any good. Kind of like if they think, it seems as if a lot of them believe that video game storytelling has not evolved at all since Pong and Super Mario Brothers on NES. Like, there's a lot that has happened since. And a lot of... I mean, hell, Sony games get made fun of all the time for being so much like movies. And we're gonna get a Last of Us TV series. I assume that they're actually going to take some stuff from the games. I assume. Because if they just make The Walking Dead again and just turn the zombies into mushroom zombies, I mean... yay! I mean, I grew up with video games, and video game storytelling has always been a thing that I have enjoyed. When I was playing on Sega Genesis, a lot of my favorite games were RPGs, because they had a butt-ton of story for the time, which at that point in the 16-bit era, you really didn't have all that much. You had a lot of platforming, a lot of action. You didn't have that much dialogue because, hey, they were cartridges. They could hold a few kilobytes. That's really not going to work. But you did that in RPGs, and I loved RPGs for that. And then as soon as we moved into the 32-bit era, it started to open up a lot more with heavy story in more action-oriented games, like your Silent Hill. Who says Silent Hill doesn't have a great story? Maybe, don't watch the movies too hard on that one. And then, of course, with the 6th generation, PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, Dreamcast, things were pushed even further. And then 7th generation, you got with the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. Things really have taken off onto a major level with... you can have video games that tell stories just as well as movies, if not better, thanks to the interactive element. You can tell stories in a completely different way in video games, but you can also tell stories as movies do already perfectly fine in games. A lot of games have better visuals than a lot of movie CGI. Think about that. In the Halo TV series, he tosses the gun over, and it slides on the ground, and it's such crap CGI, it looks better in the actual games. Like, there are aspects of storytelling that interaction helps with. And video games really are the only medium that can... Well, I guess there's some interaction going on here. But the amount of interaction you can get in gaming is on a completely different level. Now, when it comes to storytelling in video games, one of the areas that actually can't pull it off quite the same as a movie can, because it is such an interactive medium, is virtual reality. When it comes to that, a lot of games that kind of translate over from 2D to VR have a very difficult time because so much of the storytelling is done in such a cinematic way that does not translate well in virtual reality. You end up in things in VR where you're sitting there in a black void watching a giant movie screen of what's going on in the game because that's the best way they could pull it off. So the idea that a game's story is just so incompatible with TV and movies is so absolutely crazy to me. And the idea that it would be so incompatible, the best thing to do is to just do whatever you want on your own and just throw the words silver timeline out there like that fixes everything. The only thing that's doing is causing the term silver timeline to become derogatory. So I can't just sit here and complain all day. You gotta come up with some solutions. I feel like the first thing to do is to get a lot of these writers to actually sit down and play the games. They might think of it as a waste of time. They might think of it as just twiddling their thumbs and not really necessarily taking anything in. But there are plenty of games with cinematic experiences in them, interwoven with not just cutscenes, but take, say, Ghost of Tsushima. That game, in the gameplay, has such a way of presenting cinematic angles and framing, and it is just very impressive what they managed to do with that. That is another way you could just say, hey, look at this game that weaves a cinematic experience into the gameplay. And that could inform a way a movie should look cinematically. After all, a movie is a moving picture. We cannot forget that the picture aspect is kind of important. I mean, you lose the interactivity in a film, but there is so much you can gain from presentation since you don't have to worry about the interactivity part. There are people who argue that, hey, you don't want to just see the same story again anyway. It's like, no, you could have more detail. You could have more framing. You could have the sharpest, best way of giving that story as pure story since you don't have to worry about the interactivity part. There's that. I mean, when Hollywood's trying to think of a brand new movie to make, the first things that come up are sequels and reboots, because those sell, because people know what they're getting into. So why is it when it comes to adapting a game, you just say, ignore the damn story and give whatever the hell? Why is that the aspect where you decide to be creative, instead of actually making something new? If it's so good that it would work on its own, let it work on its own. Don't just slap a different face on it and say, well, that's what's going to make it sell, but we're just going to do whatever the hell we want. Why would you do that? Why? I mean, there are some interesting sequels to certain horror franchises out there that I enjoy, like Halloween 3, and that is its own creative thing that does not take any of the previous Halloweens into account and is ignored for the rest of the Halloweens. And it's a movie that I do enjoy on its own merits, but one of the worst things about it is the fact that it's called Halloween 3. People judge it as a Halloween movie, and therefore they're like, Michael Myers ain't in it, Laurie Strode ain't in it, it doesn't count, sucks. Like, the first thing to say about it is because it just breaks all the rules of what makes a Halloween movie, therefore it doesn't count, therefore bad. Even though, as a film by itself, the story it tells, the way it tells it, how much the horror builds up, how it starts, how it ends, I love that movie. But it was marketed as Halloween. And it wasn't. So I guess this goes out to the people responsible for the game franchises there. Don't give the rights to make a film or a TV show to people who don't actually want to make an adaptation of the game. If they just want to put the skin of the game on something else, it's like when you mod Shrek into Left 4 Dead as the tank. Shrek's in the game now, technically, but, I mean, it never was intended for that. Doesn't fit in the canon at all. It's a Silver Timeline Shrek there, I guess. But that's what it feels like. It feels like a mod, just a reskin, where people just around and put whatever they want into whatever they're working on, even if it technically doesn't actually fit, doesn't actually work. And that's not using the franchise to its full extent. And the fans really want that. And you have this thing. You have this where games are seen as so low in film circles for some reason, when gaming itself is a larger industry. There are a lot of fans of these things out there. You say you're trying to reach a bigger audience. The audience you're trying to reach is actually not quite the same size. So the most people who will be looking at the thing first and foremost will be the fans, and they will be the first and the loudest voice saying what the quality is of whatever it is you have produced. If Halloween 3 was seen by a whole bunch of people who had no idea what Halloween was about, it probably would have been rated a lot better than it actually was. But because it was called Halloween 3, all the Halloween fans went to see it and concluded that it was not a Halloween movie. Same goes for the Halo TV series, same goes for countless other movies and TV shows adapting video game properties. If you're gonna adapt something, you have to respect it to some degree. I mean, speaking of Shrek, Shrek also didn't necessarily represent the book it was based off of, but, well, not many people actually read the book, so... But that's kind of the same angle that people seem to be thinking of when it comes to games, but that is not the case. Games are freaking huge. You have to show them some respect. But yeah, this is another just quick video to get out there because things have been very busy for me this week as well. Things have not been going nearly as smoothly as I would like. I still have to finish the Halloween Kills review, editing that. And I still gotta get that actual second video that is the reward for the Patreon milestone. I still have to do that. That's still not this. And that sucks. But yes, thank you all for watching. I've been Dr. Shadow. And remember, respect the video games.